Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for staying. I'm really pleased to see such a good turnout. My name is Emma Smith and I'm the Education Manager for the theatres. And it gives me great pleasure to host this evening's post-show discussion. I think what we'll do is we'll just very quickly introduce the actors. Leanne, you've just got the microphone there.
I'm Leanne Best. I played Stella.
I'm Amanda Drew. I'm playing Blanche.
They should have got. You're so different. You're so different out of costume. No. I'm Annabelle playing Eunice.
Shall we just pass it down to Matt as well? I've just introduced him for you.
I'm Matt and I'm playing Mitch.
We play everyone else.
I'm Russell, played Pablo.
Alan playing Steve.
I'm Steve and I play the Doctor and the young collector.
Of course you do.
Could you talk a little bit about how you've approached the role and sort of how you began on this journey?
Yes.
It's a big question.
I think the thing is, if you read and read and read and read this script, it tells you everything. You can't cut, you have to make sure, even like the last stage instruction for Blanche is she walks and the doctor and nurse follow her. So that gives you the clue that actually she's found some kind of strength within herself at the end. Oh, God, this is going to sound awful. I'm not very good at articulating anything. But anyway, you just got to keep reading it because the guy writes everything down. You know, everything is, all the clues are there for you. So what I tended to do in the weeks before beginning rehearsal was literally try and discipline myself, not to start learning lines or anything, but to just keep reading all the characters, because every single line that is said, not just your own, will inform what the music of the piece is and, you know... and then, of course, I do the normal work, which is trying to make a biography of what's happened before the play and trying to kind of imagine myself within those circumstances.
What do you believe Stella will do in the future?
Well, we talked a lot in rehearsals about what Tennessee Williams was trying to say in the piece, but Tennessee was really quite clear when he spoke about Streetcar, and he said that he felt that Stanley and Blanche were on a collision course from the beginning, and Stanley sort of objective enough. Stanley displayed the traits in humanity that you need to survive in a world that's quite tough. That was a terribly articulate sentence. So he's a pragmatist. He's hard. He's, Stella says he's got a drive that's going to get him where he wants to go. And when Blanche is smashed up against that as somebody who's hankering after a more lyrical existence, if you like, one way she can believe in magic and this story of herself. And I think Stella falls somewhere in between the two, and I think Stella is somebody who's a survivor, and she's made a life for herself. She left home 10 years before Blanche comes to find her in New Orleans. And as a woman from quite a wealthy background, she's ended up living in a fairly squalid little apartment in a rough end of town, with a boy who's going to put food on the table.
Do you think she's smarter than Blanche?
I don't necessarily know whether it's smarter. I think she has an instinct that leads her to the belief that if she sticks with Stanley, and I do think she loves him, I think that's the great tragedy for Stella, is that in doing what Stanley does, I think he sort of irrevocably breaks that bond between them, because I think she's very happily married to Stanley at the beginning, which is why Blanche turning up and casting aspersions about all the things that are going on in the house is such a problem. Yes, there are issues in the marriage, there's domestic violence, there's issues with money, all of that kind of stuff, but I think she's really happily married.
And what about in the future? Coming back to the question.
I personally think that, again, talking about stage directions, the stage directions Tennessee Williams writes for that end moment for Stella is just devastating to me. She sobs with inhuman abandon. But then, luxurious sobbing with inhuman abandon, and then Stanley comes over and is there straight away. He immediately wants to be cajoled, he immediately wants to be comforted by her. And I just think that she's she'll pack things away in a box, maybe, and not look at them again, but I don't necessarily know what that does to a person in the end.
How much time was spent on timing and pacing? Anybody want to answer that?
I don't know. It's not sort of a conscious decision that you make in rehearsals. You know, things tend to happen organically, one hopes, and scenes sort of develop as they develop. And you know, the skill of the writing is always, there is I mean, for Blanche, every scene is like a one-act play, as far as I can see. You know, there's always a climax at the end of it. There's something. You know, it's written in that way which kind of keeps you hooked. I mean, in a purely practical way, some of the time is also involved with this bloody thing turning round, you know, because obviously that we have to wait for things to happen. And, you know, I've been in much bigger productions which have taken less time because because it is realism and, you know, things such as a poker table has to be cleared and a dinner has to be set and all those kind of things which are kind of banal, but take time to do. So you're somewhat at the mercy of that. But I also think, you know, as much as sometimes you think, Christ, this is taking forever, you know, and in a technical rehearsal, which went on for most of my adult life, it felt like, that's what you know, that's the problem, because you have things like the set's got to revolve, and it's getting used to that. I mean, it's quite, you know, it sort of throws you sometimes when you're sat there and the audience are moving away from you. You know, but it's just the practicalities of things like that. But I do think what it does allow you to do is that it allows scenes to land. You know, so you've witnessed something. You know, obviously the play sort of snowballs to its horrendous conclusion, but you know, scenes happen and they land, and the scene change and whatever that may be, or you know, whether it's turning or not or whatever, you know, it just gives the audience sometimes a moment just to go, Christ, okay, and then move on.